Orange Show. I'm your host, Sean McCarthy, and with me once again is former host, guest, and now I guess co-host for this week, Molly Staats, Director of Strategic Partnerships. Molly, hi, hello, welcome. How are you?
Thanks for having me again, Sean.
Molly and I recently went up to Wisconsin for the Experience Inbound conference. So we're going to do a quick episode recapping our experience, pun intended, there, where I got a chance to speak. We got a chance to have a lot of cool conversations with a lot of amazing people. We'll also sneak in a few tips for attending conferences, what not to do, how to get the most out of it, that sort of thing. But then first, I want to hand it over to Molly because we have a product update to share with you, which we're hoping to do more of within the Lucky Orange Show, give you an idea of what's happening at Lucky Orange, what we're working on, because after all, the Lucky Orange Show doesn't exist without Lucky Orange, the product. So Molly, what's up with Lucky Orange?
Yeah, I think one of the things that since got here 5 years ago, we've kind of been talking about how to make the product itself easier to use. So how to meet people where they're at. And one of the ways that continually has came up over the last 5 years is we need a natively translated app. We realize that English obviously is spoken by a lot of different people, but it may not be the language they're most familiar with or most comfortable with. And we want our tool to be something that's not only they're comfortable with using the tools, but also just interacting with. So excited to announce Lucky Orange is now translated into German, French, Italian, and Spanish. Hopefully that's just the start of where we're going, but I think that's really important as a global company with an international audience, really to have a strong impact with those audiences by translating the languages. So that's kind of the first big update that we kind of have there.
Yeah, that's cool. I mean, I think especially as a SaaS product, a lot of our updates are like quality of life things. So they're not necessarily a big new feature, but it does make the experience better. And while some people previously could have translated the app through Google Translate or whatever it is on the page, this is more accurate. It feels more natural, and it's just overall a better experience for everybody using the app.
Yeah, like you said, I mean, there's tools out there that automatically translate the browser and Google Translate, but this is really a bespoke experience where we literally went through every single word in the app and made sure it was translated appropriately. It made sense in context. And so it was a big undertaking by the team. So big kudos to the team, but excited to get those 4 languages out there and then see where else we go from there.
Yeah, definitely a shout out to the engineering team for a lot of hard work there. Shout out to Molly for managing everything as it continued through the entire process. Any other product updates?
Yeah, so as a lot of the listeners probably know, we are well entrenched in the Shopify ecosystem, and we have recently been able to work with Shopify Plus merchants to actually visually track their checkout pages through heat maps and session recording. So while we know Shopify is one of the leading e-commerce checkout pages, it's always good to understand that final step and be able to see on session recordings and heat maps really how people are engaging with the checkout. So that's something we've been working with Shopify very closely to get access to and make that experience better. So if you're looking to re-platform, if you're looking to go from Shopify to Shopify Plus, know that Lucky Orange is here and kind of supporting you along that journey to, candidly, the most important step of the conversion funnel, which is the checkout. So excited to see that rolling out here.
That's awesome. So you can use sessions and heat maps, follow all the way through checkout. And the primary difference there for Shopify Plus is that you can actually make changes and optimize your checkout page, whereas with standard Shopify, there's really nothing that you're able to do just from the platform standpoint because it is such an optimized checkout page already. That's really exciting. All right, shifting gears back to Experience Inbound. So if you're not familiar with Experience Inbound, this is the 10th year of Experience Inbound, and it is Wisconsin's premier sales and marketing conference, but it does attract an audience from all over the place. And so this year it was held in Milwaukee on day 1, and Green Bay on day 2, with 2 cool venues, the Harley Davidson Museum on day 1, which Molly is a huge motorcycle and leather fan, so it was super cool, right up our alley.
Fit right in.
It was all I could do to keep her from going through the Harley Davidson Museum for the 3rd time. Said, Molly, we got to go. I got to give a session. And she's like, no, I need to read more about Harley Davidsons. Super cool venue, though. And then Lambeau Field, Green Bay Packers, doesn't get much cooler than that. Legendary spot. We weren't there to play football, though, maybe when I was 10, I wish that I would have done that. But sales and marketing conference. So, Molly, what's like your number one highest level takeaway, maybe something you learned or something about the experience in general?
I think it's interesting you point out while it's Wisconsin's premier event, you did see regional people coming in from the Chicago area and kind of all across the state too. But I think a big takeaway from, and maybe this isn't necessarily as specific to the conference itself, but the big takeaway is people are out there, marketers, salespeople are out there, and they're trying to find that one thing that applies to their business. And I think a lot of the comments and questions you got from your speech were, okay, I heard you and I heard how this tactic and you can run this sort of thing, but how does it apply to my business? And I think it's our responsibility as marketers, as people selling products or services of any kind to say, yeah, we're very specific and we do a lot of specific things and give you examples, but also not alienate people from being able to put themselves in your shoes and say, yeah, your product applies to me here, or whatever you're doing applies to me here. So I think that's something to keep in mind just from a marketing and sales standpoint, as you may come at people and say, hey, our product is this, our product is that. And they're like, yeah, but that doesn't relate to me at all. It's interesting to hear people say that over and over again and to continue to have those conversations of people get so narrow-minded and so focused in, but then you totally lose them altogether.
Yeah. I think I gave this feedback to somebody on either from the White Art Group or Stream Creative, who are the two great agency hosts.
Big shout out to those guys. They were great.
The leadership teams from both of those, the event teams from both of those, very present in the event and awesome to work with. But I gave the feedback that a lot of the conversations that were happening felt really grounded in reality and really grounded in advice and strategies that can help people just trying to be better at business, be better at marketing, be better at sales, whatever it is. And from the keynotes all the way on down to my session, it felt like all the advice that was given was very much resonating with people who are just trying to do better at their job. So
and that's the thing too, is you go to these events and conferences, and no, do I expect to attend something for 8 hours a day and have my whole job figured out? No. But if I can pick 1 or 2 or 3 things that are like, I heard that and I can apply that today, I don't have to read between the lines or figure out things. I'm just like, I saw that, I heard that piece of advice. Tomorrow I can go tell my boss, this is what I'm going to do as a result. Those are what you're looking for. And I couldn't agree more. This event was all that.
I think that's one of the challenges with the talk that I was giving about, and anything really with website optimization, is you can go best practices or you can go try and get really, really specific advice. And people in the audience say, I'm not sure exactly how to connect the dots between that and my specific website. So that's a great learning for me, is to say, how specific, how niche can I go with advice before it kind of alienates certain part of the audience? But I think a lot of the presentations did a really, really good job of connecting the dots for sort of a broad audience. And I've got a few in mind that kind of stand out. And Mark Hans was talking about micro content. Mark is deeply involved in the HubSpot Academy, which is like their learning system. And he was talking about how to create better micro content that serves different needs throughout the organization. And that's something that I think people in content marketing specifically, or marketing, kind of know is like, yeah, we should be making better small pieces of content to serve really, really specific needs. But the way he teed it up was how you can come up with the content ideas and grabbing information from throughout the organization and turning it into a narrative to help with sales or to help with whatever. And it turns, something as broad as like quote unquote sales enablement into a really specific thing to say, they have this point in the journey that's bugging people up. They could use a video, or they could use a custom landing page or whatever it might be to help get people through there. That was a really helpful kind of framework to apply. And he had an awesome sheet printed out and put on everybody's table, which you don't see very often in talks.
Totally agree.
But I think I really enjoyed that one.
I think the thing, especially about Mark and even some of the other ones, which I'm sure we'll get to, is there was no gatekeeping of the information. So I think sometimes we come across something, or, even this podcast, or I know we talked about podcasts at the event a lot, or you find a really cool way to do content or something like that. And you're like, no, I'm going to keep that close to my chest because I don't want to share that out with anyone. That's the powerful thing about building communities like this, is it allows you to, I know what micro content is. Oh, you're doing it well this way. You can be successful at HubSpot and do it. And I can come to Lucky Orange, 2 fundamentally different companies doing different things. But across the board, I think the lack of gatekeeping is something we all need to continue to lift up and support each other on.
And I also think of, the lack of gatekeeping. An agency's process is something that they will publicize to help potential clients understand, here's what you're going to do. Here's how you engage with us. But there's also some gatekeeping that can happen there where it's like, you trust us that we've got this secret sauce or this magic recipe. When you work with us, we'll do this work and spit out an outcome to you. Where that did not happen and where they were sharing everything was that cool round table, basically the great website debate. It might have been called something like that with the wider group, with representatives from a technical perspective, an SEO perspective, and a design perspective. And I thought that was a really cool way to tee up the different parts. They're framing it up through the whole process of starting to build out a new website. I thought that was a really cool way to say, here's the different perspectives, and they're all important, but maybe some of them are admittedly more important in different parts of the process. So, you've got your SEO dude on LinkedIn saying this is the most important thing in the world. That might be true in a silo, but you have to, in the real world, back to your point about grounding this in sort of like reality, you have to understand that it's not just the only thing that matters.
It was really interesting because in that session, the SEO specialist, someone asked the question, well, is the homepage the most important part of my website? And she said, honestly, depends, which everyone hates that answer, but she was like, sometimes no. Sometimes your homepage is not the most important part of your website. It's this product page, it's, your hero product or what have you. And I thought that was an interesting concept too, because I think we lean a lot on homepages depending on what they are, but it is unique and something that you should think about in totality of, you don't necessarily have to put all your eggs in that basket. And to hear an SEO specialist be like, nah, it's not always important to everyone is interesting and refreshing perspective.
I agree. I thought that was really cool. We got to talk about the Knicks moment that you had with Jay Kunzo on day one. So Jay Kunzo delivering an amazing keynote to kick off things in the morning, talking about becoming people's favorites, mentions the Knicks, and Molly has to give a woo moment, not once, but twice. Today, as we're recording, the Knicks have just been beaten in the playoffs. So sorry, Jay. Sorry, Molly. Sorry to Molly's son, who's a big Knicks fan. But that keynote both days was just like a killer way. And I think I mentioned it to somebody, like, I don't know if there's a stage that dude couldn't fill the entire thing. There's like in comedy, there's like the physical comedy thing. And in speaking, there's the physical speaking thing. And he really did a cool job of like rounding out beyond the actual value of the content, just the delivery of it is. I thought it was really enjoyable.
I mean, you mentioned Jay's kind of catchphrase, you don't have to be the best, but you have to be everyone's favorite. And I think that's interesting to reflect on in multiple elements of not only content you produce or, things you're doing with your product, but also like your own personal and professional career. Like you don't have to be the best at, SEO or the best at content development or the best, product owner. But if people like you and you're people's favorites, that's going to bode well for you. So I thought there was a little bit of like that introspective moment where I was like, I don't necessarily where you have the imposter syndrome. You get out there and you're like, gosh, am I the best at this? And being around all these other marketing professionals and you're like, maybe I'm not, but do people like me? And not in the like fake nicety way, but also just like you're easy to be around. It's enjoyable to work with you, that sort of thing. At least from a partnership role really resonates with me as well.
That's a cool takeaway. We also had between sessions a nice conversation with Andy Crestodina, who's been around in the industry and really, really great speech himself. That sounds so formal. Session. We can't take these things too seriously, but a great session around AI. And I keep thinking back about the implications of what he's talking about, things not to be worried about, things to be worried about, no-click searches and how traditional content marketing will help you show up in the GPTs. But we even had a good talk between sessions about using ChatGPT to help understand your specific audience's worries, motivations, and things that they care about. And he was doing that with a simple prompt and uploading a screenshot of a website and just some really innovative ideas of how to apply AI in a more meaningful way. than spitting out blog posts that are trash.
I think the part Sean's leaving out, because he's being a little humble in this scenario, is I was actually sitting next to Andy during Sean's session, and Sean was talking about website and what people, their worries and their fears and their motivations for coming to a website. And once they're on the website, what that experience looks like. And Andy actually took something that Sean was talking about in the presentation, took it from his laptop, popped it in ChatGPT, where he was essentially doing an analysis of a website he was currently working on and saying, what worries or fears people may have coming to this website. And ChatGPT, spit out some recommendations and different things like that. And I'm definitely oversimplifying the scenario, but it was cool in that moment to see, hey, a 20, 25-year veteran of the industry is listening to, someone from Lucky Orange who has a different perspective, a different take about, worries, fears. And I think Will and Sean have really good conversations on the Lucky Orange podcast on another episode. So you guys should check that out if not. But to see Andy be able to say, I'm running an agency, I'm experienced, and I'm trying to learn this every day too. I'm going to take what someone learns, what someone's teaching me at this event, even though I'm another speaker, and apply it. And then we had a really strong conversation about it. So I think that willingness and opening to learn was also refreshing to be around.
Yeah, it's like we talked about with the event at large. I feel like a lot of these events do get into like clicks and, zombie walks between sessions, and there's no real genuine interaction. I mean, there's some obviously, but
sure.
It can be harder to come by than at something like this event. And then the other keynote, I almost said headliner because I'm a big music person, but the other keynote is Kyle Jepsen talking about evangelism. We know him well from LinkedIn and from all the amazing HubSpot tips and tricks, not ticks. It is almost summer, but,
it is.
Tips and tricks. And that, was a really inspirational thing. We came back here and said, how can we do this?
Yep.
HubSpot is a unique situation with product releases every single day. And so we're strategizing of how we can apply that here. But there's certainly a place for evangelism in all organizations. I think it's just a challenge. The challenge is to figure out who, how, when, where, and finding the right person to do it, because Kyle is clearly the right person for the job at HubSpot.
It's funny though, because Kyle, listening to his story, he didn't know when he set out in his career, he wasn't like, when I grow up, I want to be an evangelist. And I've also seen recently Harley Finkelstein from Shopify has been posting on LinkedIn, like, when kids grow up, they don't set out and say, I want to be an entrepreneur, but why don't they? And I think Kyle was a good example of, he found his niche that he was pretty good at. He had supportive leadership at HubSpot that said, yeah, this is worth your time. And the people around him and in his community and ecosystem supported him through that. He is just a ball of energy and just exciting to be around, to be in the presence of him. It's also funny too, because he kind of went through in his conversation, and something Sean always tells me is like, hitting publish always wins. Like, just get it out there. And that's what Kyle talked about too. And something that was a big takeaway for me too is like, it doesn't have to be the most polished, the perfect lighting. And even to have this conversation, Sean and I are messing with the lighting and making sure the sound's perfect. And it's like, at the end of the day, hitting publish wins. And I think Sean's right when he says that, because people just want the content in a way they can consume it and stuff that's meaningful for them. And Kyle's now has job security for the rest of his life at HubSpot, and has a really strong community and following of relevant information he's sharing with the world.
Definitely. I can't wait until we export this and it sounds terrible.
So bad. Yeah.
Making this sound perfect. We'll see. Well, speaking of like career paths, going to conferences in general is something that a lot of people just stumble upon at one point. They get an email that says, hey, we need you to go to this thing. And I know that prior to Lucky Orange, you've spent a good amount of time at your fair share of trade shows and booths, and your hands might start shaking when we talk about conferences. But is there anything that you would say to somebody who is starting to go to conferences or who wants to go and get value out of them? Any tips you'd give them for getting more out of that conference?
Sean and I talk about this sometimes too, like life-giving and life-taking activities. And I definitely am someone that's outgoing. I like to be social. Like, I feed off of other people's energy. But even for me, like, holy moly, like, conferences are exhausting. Like, I get exhausted at the end of the day. You get back to your hotel room, you're like, I can't do anything but just chill. I would say if you're going to invest in the time it's about really just walking up to that person and having the conversation. Just ask the question. Like, it may feel awkward and uncomfortable at first, but those people are also feeling awkward and uncomfortable. Yeah. Like, even coming down off of your talk and then people come up to you and ask questions, like, that feels good because you're having a conversation about a topic you feel passionate about. So I would say just ask the question. And again, pace yourself. It doesn't have to be like, if you're like, I'm going to talk to people all day, I need to step away at lunch. Go take the lunch by yourself and just hang out by yourself, but save enough energy so you can walk up and say yes, because if not, those are where all the things we're talking about are a lot of side conversations. It's not on the main stage to a big group of people. So save the energy, but take the time. Just go ask the question. It's important. It matters.
I think everybody's there to learn.
Yeah.
And if you strike up a conversation with somebody, the worst thing that can happen is that it doesn't go anywhere.
Yeah.
For
sure.
I think one piece of advice that I would have that's kind of maybe faux pas is that it's okay to leave a session.
Yeah.
Your company has paid a decent amount of money, or in some cases, a lot of money for you to be there.
Yeah.
I think that if you're between two sessions and you're trying to figure out what to go to, and it's just not resonating with you, or sometimes what happens is that the topic as described might be a little bit more advanced than you need. Yeah. I find that sometimes, and I'm like, this is cool, but I'll never apply this in the next, year.
For sure.
It's okay to jump between sessions. And obviously you have to be respectful in getting up and leaving.
Mm-hmm.
And that may be easier said than done in some ballrooms and locations than other, but you're there to learn and you're there to get value. And so I think it's okay to protect your time. And it's okay to sneak away if you need a minute just to relax and take a breather. So I think pacing yourself is really good, but definitely, like you said, at lunch or whatever it is, just sitting by people and talking to people. And the biggest thing that I've learned this year going to a few different things is that everybody is trying to figure this out.
Oh my gosh, so true.
Everybody is navigating similar problems. Big companies, little companies have strikingly similar issues sometimes. And it can come down to things like culture. It can come down to things like budget or whatever it is. Everybody has something they're trying to solve for.
I mean, goes back to kind of what we've talked about, like earlier, the imposter syndrome, right? Where you go up, you go to these conferences, you're like, Sean McCarthy, he's the expert on CRO. Yes. I cannot, but of course, I mean, rare exception of you, but you go up to these people and at the end of the day, they're there to solve problems too. Mm-hmm. Like they're there, if they're an agency, they're trying to talk to you because you could be a potential customer. What problems are you having? How can we reposition things differently? Like peer-to-peer conversations. So once you get over that, you're not going to be the smartest person in the room, and that's okay because everyone feels the same way. It just makes these events a lot easier to navigate and gives you a better experience overall because you're not pretending to be someone you're not, but you do have your expertise in the area you're an expert in, and that's fine too.
Yeah. Buy the ticket, take the ride, go for it.
Yeah. Never don't say no. I would say too, sometimes you're like, oh, I can't step away from work. And we actually had a conversation with AJ Wilcox, one of the speakers there, where his agency really focuses in on B2B LinkedIn ads. And I asked him, I was like, AJ, you guys are a smaller agency, you're the CEO of it. If you step away to come to an event like this, obviously that's 2 days, 3 days worth of work that's not getting done. And his answer was just like, this is important. Like this stuff is important. Like doing the actual work's important. So I would say that's something, from the top of a company, someone running an agency, like they feel the value to step away for 2 or 3 days for events like this. And he's a seasoned, veteran in the industry. So that should tell you something about events like this.
And I think too, if you're in a space where you're trying to come up with some sort of innovation or some sort of innovative idea, and we're challenging ourselves internally to change the way some things run in our industry.
Yep.
If you're doing that, this is a great testing ground for those ideas and casual conversations, asking people what they think about an idea without giving too much away, asking people how they feel about current solutions in the market, stuff like that.
Yeah.
These may or may not be our average customer. They might be leaning towards the agency or whatever, but they make up some part of our customer base. And so it's really important for us to be boots on the ground talking to them. And it's a more candid and relaxed conversation generally than if we have some sort of cold outreach to somebody or say, hey, can we jump on and talk about this?
Or
really
a customer interview or things like that. So yeah, this is your customer interview. Mm-hmm. And again, if you're making this case, your organization, your leadership team to say, I should go. I think Sean makes a good point. This is your opportunity to do those customer interviews without sitting down with the checkboard and saying, what do you think about this? What do you think about this? It's contextualizing them with people that are experts that do care about this. And it allows you to have those conversations. That's just one more thing to add in the why this is important and why I should go.
Yeah, for sure. Great experience.
Yeah, totally.
Green Bay, Milwaukee, both amazing crowds and fun people. Again, big thanks to Wider Group and Stream Creative for throwing the event. Super exciting product updates. Appreciate you sharing those. Again, I hope to do more of that within the context of the show, because it's important to share those in this frame and give you some space to talk about those and have whoever on that might be a good representative to talk about those things. So
for sure.
Had a lot of fun in Wisconsin. We did get stuck in Detroit, the amazing, beautiful city of Detroit, from 11 p.m. to about 5 a.m.
I wouldn't say you fed me very well on this trip. Like, I went along with Sean, and I wouldn't say there's nothing against some of the restaurants we ate at, but it was not my most well fed, because every time we were showing up to a place, it was closed. So that was an interesting experience.
They always say that adventure begins when something goes wrong. So
correct.
It was great. And through that, we've bonded. It was really great. So thank you for tuning in. We'll be back again next week with kind of a more typical conversation with somebody. Not going to spoil who it is, but some exciting guests coming up, some exciting times at Lucky Orange, a lot of product releases coming up. Let us know if there's anybody specifically that you want to have on the show, if you know anybody, or if there's somebody who you've been looking up to or reading about or whatever that we should connect with.
Other than me?
Other than Molly.
Okay.
Let us know. Happy optimizing.